Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for enabling us to engage in this discussion because foundations we are collaborating with is doing exactly that. We have designed a dedicated presentation which focuses on selected areas of telemedicine within the healthcare system, standardization as the part and parcel of high-quality telemedicine. So I will now open my presentation to tell you who we are. Some of you know what we do. As you can see, our priorities focus on development of telemedicine, and it is a critical element of healthcare in times of COVID-19 pandemic. Well, of course, I'm not alone because I have select company of experts with me. Okay, it's working now. You can see my presentation. I'm a legal counsel representing Domański, Zakrzewski, Palinka legal firm, and I specialize in healthcare regulations, including new technologies in healthcare, AI, telemedicine, health data. So, working at the foundation together with my colleagues, we are making a legal contribution to the foundation, but we have with us physicians, practitioners, mainly cardiologists, but with broad experience. So we have Dr. Paweł Balsam, MD, another very experienced medical professional, Piotr Soszyński of Medicover, also a medical manager, Andrzej Osuch, which vast experience in IT, and from the world of new technologies, Paweł Sieczkiewicz, representing medical platforms. So as the foundation, we try to represent multidisciplinary slate of companies, and we are sharing interdisciplinary knowledge, including law, new technologies, medicine, and other areas. We collaborate with a number of public and non-public organizations as well. So first of all, I will give you overview of the foundation, our priorities, development of telemedicine, and later I will give the floor to experts to discuss standardization of telemedicine, which in our view is one of the key elements of the development of telemedical services, which should be provided on the highest level possible. And standardization in different areas is the fundamental tool. And this is reflected by pre-pandemic cases, and especially cases we've seen this year. So Piotr Soszyński will present standards for telemedical consultations of the Polish Chamber of Physicians. Later, Andrzej Osuch will discuss IT aspects, and Paweł Sieczkiewicz will discuss the role of telemedical platform. So as the foundation, we bring together several dozen companies. You see approximately 25 on this slide, and these are companies operating on the medical services market. They are service providers in a broad sense, dedicated service providers for telemedical services, including medical platforms. We have high-tech providers, specializing strictly in data processing, and highly specialized medicinal devices manufacturers. We have our medical team experts and our legal experts. So putting together our foundation, we wanted to prove that as a trade organization, we are able to provide back-to-back perspective on medicine from the point of view of technology provider, service provider, and other providers. So we do our best as the foundation, and this is our core activity, to eliminate barrier to development of telemedicine, so financial, technical, also mindset may be a roadblock. We are teaming up with public and non-public partners, for example, trade organizations, national associations, in addition to participating in all legislative initiatives. We are contributing to development of regular documents. 2 years ago, we have published a report on effective capitalization on the potential of telemedicine in Poland. We described in it how we see further development of telemedicine. We've pinpointed activities that must be undertaken. Some of them have been launched, some challenges we're still facing in Poland, and in the meantime, new challenges emerged. But in the wake of pandemic, we launched 2 initiatives related to standardization. We have drafted telemedicine guides for patients and medical professionals, which were meant and are actually helping physicians and patients alike to make the most of teleconsultations, not only during pandemic, but anytime, how to put medical professionals on the safe side legally, how to respect patients' rights and ensure the highest level of security. Halfway through the year, teamed up with us, the Polish Chamber of Physicians have put together guidelines for telemedicine. We believe that right now we have 3 key priorities: standardization of telemedicine in healthcare. This will be guaranteed by quality and safety-driven telemedicine. Well, P1 will drive development of safe data exchange, health data exchange. We are talking about patient data, and because we have no personal interactions with the patients, we have to have access to patient details, not only while the consultation lasts, but also data and records collated during previous consultations. And we are introducing specialized telemedical services. We want to make sure that physicians can benefit from medicinal products that take measurements, because this boosts the potential of telemedical services. And right now, we want to focus on standardization of telemedicine. So over to Piotr Soszyński, who will tell you more about it from the perspective of primary healthcare. Good morning, everyone. I don't know how I can change slides. Okay, if you could go back to the previous slide. Okay, there is a small delay. Okay, clicked on it. Okay, so like Mr. Płachocki said, as part of the medical working group, we have a team which has been reviewing from the very start development of telemedicine in Poland, and we noticed an essential need to put together guidelines that would identify how telemedical services, how teleconsultations should be provided. This need was demonstrated by service providers or medical units. We are talking about outpatients and outpatient clinics, hospitals, and medical professionals who suddenly found themselves in a whole new reality. They had to cope with very different communication channel, and they were afraid how to do it safely how to provide consultations, which conditions had to be met, is it legal, etc., etc., and also from the perspective of the patient. Because remote consultation was completely new to them. Naturally, pandemic has accelerated development of e-consultations and telemedicine and has demonstrated that it's essential to put together standards and regulate this area. So we've relied on guidelines, on guidebooks put together by Telemedical working group. They were published, probably these were the first guidebooks to be ever published in Poland. And this group wanted to support physicians, service providers, and patients and ensure that a safe, value-driven remote services are provided. So meanwhile, a regulation of the Minister of Health was published on organizational standards for teleservices in primary healthcare. This standard was identified on the basis of recommendations of the national consultant, and we believe that it's aligned to the rules put together by the Telemedical working group and later put together with the Polish medical chamber, and the service provider should communicate terms and conditions of provision of medical services to the patient, should confirm the patient's identity. And just one comment. Well, this standard is relevant exclusively to primary healthcare, although it should cover, in general, all telemedical services provided as part of outpatients healthcare, including specialist consultations and highly specialist consultations as well. So, for example, consultations provided by the hospital to patients who have been checked out.
So there is also a request for our lawmakers so that this is actually extended to cover all medical services of this type.
Zbyt szybko tutaj działamy. O, dziękuję bardzo. No i rzeczywiście wytyczne na...
So guidelines of the Chamber of Physicians, and in particular the medical community that I also represent, believe that it is necessary to respond in this respect, because there were many queries that pertain to the ethical code for physicians, where amongst many other provisions, there is also one that says that a physician should also provide services in person, and it can only be done in particularly urgent cases, or when there is no possibility of direct contact with the patients in a distant form or online. This is actually outdated. It no longer reflects the current development of medical services, and it is actually very positive that our working group, together with the Chamber of Physicians, has decided to look at this topic, to take it up, and adopted guidelines this summer that pertain to three aspects. One is legal and organizational guidelines, and we had the pleasure to contribute in quite a major way. We also looked at other aspects, the telemedical services. There we had experts involved, and then there was a summary, 10 steps for telemedicine visit, doctor's visit. So looking at two topics that were very important from the point of view of developing standards. And this is something we have to keep in mind from the ethical point of view. Doctors should always consider whether telemedicine is an appropriate solution for a particular health problem or the stage of medical treatment. It is always good to have an introductory telemedicine session in order to establish, also by way of tests, whether it is necessary for the patient to be to appear in person. Telemedicine is also a good solution for some follow-up and checkups, but in some particular health problems, a telemedicine session should not be the first meeting between a patient and a physician. So there are different things that need to be taken account. There are different solutions that are adapted better for different health problems. So this should always be weighed, as telemedicine is not always an appropriate solution for a given health problem or for a given stage of treatment. So all these things have to be weighed, decided, and also the 10 steps should be taken into account. And telemedicine also requires complete documentation, and it has to be offered with due diligence, just as a physical person-to-person visit. Thank you very much. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. So, by way of concluding, I would like to mention the 10 steps that are part of our guidelines, with particular attention to point 3. We need to be certain as to the identity of the patient. So we need to be sure that we are actually consulting the right person. And then the point 7, we need to issue the appropriate documents. Each doctor, each physician has the possibility to use e-prescription. We will also be able to issue electronic medical leaves and also actually prescribe tests and examinations. We also need to make sure whether we are understood by the patient and whether patient has some additional information to provide for us. It's very important, in particular when we are speaking to the patients on the phone. We need to make sure that everything has been understood. And then there is the legal requirement to actually maintain and keep up to date the medical documentation. A telemedicine service is a medical service that has to comply with the appropriate requirements as to the documents prepared. Thank you. Thank you very much, Piotr. A lot of work has already been carried out, and trying to sum up, these standards should be extended to all telemedicine services, starting with consultation over the phone. We spoke about the primary care, but it would be very valuable to hear from specialists. And there, I would like to invite Piotr Balsam. Would you be so kind as to present your slides now?
Witam Państwa serdecznie.
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for the invitation for the telemedicine working group. I'd like to share with you the fruit of our work and also to inform you about what we are working on. I am the member of the board of TGR. I am also representing the Polish Cardiology Society. I also cooperate with the European Cardiology Society in this respect. The scientific societies and associations look at the effectiveness of different methods, at the safety of different methods, prepare standards for pharmacotherapy and the other more invasive treatments. We want the methods applied to be secure and effective. And when we introduce new methodologies, we want them to be just as effective and just as safe for the patients. Both the Polish and the European Cardiology Society prepare new standards and also organize the new knowledge. Telemedicine is a wonderful solution. However, we need to know where to apply it in order for it to be effective. The standards that we're working on, even though they are widely available, they are not obligatory. And generally speaking, when we look at the principles of actually providing services as a physician, as a doctor, we need to apply all the developments, all the standards of medicine. So once telemedicine is a standard, we also are required to apply it. We should also build a bridge between what we work on in our societies, but also with the general medicine. Cardiology is not the only specialization. Dermatology, pulmonologists and diabetologists also work. We have a very big delay, Pavel. I do apologize. If you can just give us some information in a nutshell, what you have already achieved. Okay, the solutions that we have already presented, well, there was a document in 2018 on telemedicine in cardiology. It is available on our websites. We are currently working on an updated version of this publication, and it will be available before the end of the year. And we encourage everyone to familiarize themselves with this publication. Those medical centers that actually use telemedicine should look at it in order to see when to apply telemedicine and how to make sure that it is both effective and safe. I would now like to give the floor to Andrzej Osuch, who will discuss the IT aspects of telemedicine. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. IT is the sphere that actually provides services for medical professionals, so we should not overshadow the other aspects of medicine. Doctors and nurses should be able to focus on patients and not on technical problems with the devices that they use in order to communicate with the patients. There was a regulation by the Minister of Health on the standards for medical telemedicine in primary care, primary medical care, and as part of the consultation process, we did contribute to the final shape of this regulation. And I'd like to say that in this respect, the legislation in place is of high quality. It is not focused on the technical aspects. Andrzej, you are actually in control of the slide, so you have to use the right arrow. So in this regulation, details are not discussed. It creates a framework and then refers to sectoral standards and norms. If you look at the slides, we have a number of quotes from the regulation which provides for the information on making sure that identity is checked, that confidence is provided, that no unauthorized person should have access to information and the system. Why it is worthwhile to introduce standards in the world of telemedicine? It is important because the standards used by doctors, nurses, and patients should actually run in the background. And this effect can only be achieved if we apply standard solutions. They have been checked, they are efficient, and they have certain minimum requirements for different platforms. In order to, thanks to standardization, we can achieve a higher level of cybersecurity, using the secure by design principle. We also make sure that the electronic medical documentation is interoperational. The right doctors have access to right documents at the right time. There are also requirements for devices. Devices can actually be then applied in different configurations, replaced and reconnected. The electronic identification and identity checks need to be used more widely, and the standardization for the data, for IT models, it makes it possible to analyze data in a better way. Then we can generate reports and analyze the medical data. And I would now like to give the floor to Paweł Szyszkiewicz.
Well, Paweł, we are after time, so just 1 minute to recap discussion to date. Okay, I'm trying to change to show you another slide. Okay, the arrow doesn't work. It seems to be inactive. Okay, the question is, platforms, how can they help us in provision of teleservices? Okay, so I'm going to discuss it. We are currently in a stage where all entities are providing teleservices, but many of them have been taking it back technology-wise. We are talking about simple barriers like the inability to get through with your phone call, inability to share medical records, enclosed photographs. So these are roadblocks for physicians which prevent them from focusing entirely on the therapy, on the patients. So we can also integrate our solutions with other medical devices. And this is true telemedicine we are talking about, because we are able to monitor the patients and educate the patient on follow-up treatment. In terms of safety, we can see that in many situations, terms and conditions are commonly violated. For example, records are sent without encryption. They are not password protected. We have video conferences using platforms which are prone to different accidents. Especially in the medical sectors, those incidents can do a lot of damage. We see transfer of medical records outside EOG area, what is a safety incident in itself. And last but not least, this platform enables the physician to focus entirely on the patient, on the therapy, instead of thinking, am I breaching or violating security? Do they have to switch between several systems? Because EDM system has no interoperability with other systems, because technology provider has no capabilities to integrate the platform with state system. So I want to appeal, if you are developing a brand new system, especially for public healthcare, it should be based on solutions that offer interoperability, because at the end of the day, it's ease and comfort for the physician and patient. So safety comes first, and optimization of time. We need to recap our discussion. So more standards are needed. Standards should be put together by experts. Standards should take into account medical, IT, and legal issues. And at the end of the day, the physician and the patient should get simple instructions how to implement innovations, because just like any other innovations in healthcare, telemedicine is complex, and with expert advice, we can quickly improve the quality, what is essential in those challenging times. And one question to Paweł Balsam, because he wants to make an appeal. What else can we do as part of teleservice to help patients, help the system in response to the raging pandemic? Well, I have several use cases that could help diminish the mortality rate that we are currently witnessing. It has doubled in the last week of October versus 2019, and there are no facilitations for rehabilitation because beds are occupied by COVID patients, and without the first visit to the clinic, which is not essential, you can't get on with your therapy. For example, if you have a severe heart condition, we have many devices that can be implanted, and this can be rolled out, but our foundation is assisting those efforts. Okay, so to recap, standardization and tapping into the full potential of telemedicine, specialist telemedicine in the next 3 months to safeguard patients who very often belong to the high risk group. Thank you very much.